Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hi, I'm Kevin Vost with a new gift-giving idea. Are you trying to convince someone that God really does exist and that God really does care about them? Do you wish you could just hand someone a book that would prove God really does love them and that he really wants to be their friend? Well, there's a book out now that does just that. To find it, Google this title, Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. You'll find it instantly. Just Google Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. That's Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles.
We are on page 145, and we're going to be reading the miracle about the tabernacle breeze. On one occasion, I was in an empty church and sitting about 20 feet away from the tabernacle where Jesus resides in the form of the Holy Eucharistic Bread, which we call the Blessed Sacrament. I had been to this church almost daily for about 2 years at this point. I was sitting where I normally sat each day when suddenly a cool, gentle breeze began to blow on the front of my face, and it was coming from the tabernacle as if a fireman's hose was connected to the tabernacle and the other end of it was next to my face, blowing this gentle breeze about 5 inches in front of my face. As soon as I noticed this cool, gentle breeze on my face, it immediately stopped. And then it immediately began to blow on my face again, but this time it was blowing up from the floor about 15 feet in front of me and about 20 feet off to the right side. The breeze was blowing on the right side of my face now instead of directly at the front of my face. Without thinking at all, I just had a gift of instant knowledge from Jesus inspiring me that whatever was blowing a breeze at me from the tabernacle a moment ago was now blowing at me from the floor in the front of me and off to the right. So I got up and walked over to the front corner of the church and saw a Holy Eucharistic host lying there on the floor. It had obviously been stepped down over time, and it looked as though it was there for a few days after the Sunday Mass had been said about 4 days ago. Jesus needed me to go over there and retrieve his host. I didn't think much about what I was doing because the cool breeze blowing on my face when it stopped and came from the other side, it just made my instincts realize I had to get up and go see what this thing was that was now blowing on my face from the floor over there. So it was the breeze itself that made me get up and go over there. This same miracle happened again about 2 years later in another church, which I was visiting, except the host was in a different spot on the floor at that time. Jesus was so wonderful to me to give me this miracle twice in my life, and I realized this. Both of these miracles have proven to me personally that the Holy Eucharistic Bread is indeed a living and life-giving force, as both Jesus and St. Paul said it was in the Holy Bible as follows. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 26, "Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body.'" In John 6, verse 53, Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who eats me will live because of me." In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, St. Paul said, "For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it, and he said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way, also the cup after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes.' So St. Paul says, 'Whoever therefore eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of profaning the body and blood of the Lord. Let a man examine himself, and so eat the bread and drink the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without discerning the body eats and drinks judgment upon himself. That is why many of you are weak and ill, and some have died.' Thank you, Jesus, for giving me, Tony, this holy gift of your presence in the Blessed Sacrament, and proving to me that the Holy Blessed Sacrament, that little piece of bread, is really the presence of God." We're on page 148 now. We're reading the miracle called "A Very Bright Car Light." Sometimes Jesus calls his friends into a Catholic church to have a friendly visit and chat. And Jesus really does enjoy having friendly chats with all those who come to visit him at the church. Over many years now, Jesus has proven to me that he loves me more than I could ever possibly ever love myself. And I know he enjoys chatting with me, although I personally obviously wonder why he enjoys talking to me, a tiny speck in the whole universe. But Jesus enjoys talking to every one of us every time we approach him. One day, as I was rushing around and trying to complete a lot of errands, I suddenly felt a nudge, a prompting to stop, and as I was driving by a Catholic church, I felt Jesus calling me in for a chat. So I parked my car outside the main doorway to the church, and I went inside for an invited chat. As we were talking, I closed my eyes. I usually close my eyes when I need to slowly and carefully absorb some amazing inspirations which Jesus is sending to me. In one of these brilliant and penetrating moments, wherein I sensed the great love of God toward me, I opened my eyes and noticed that the statue of the resurrected Christ, the statue that he is not hanging on a cross, he's standing there after he rose from the dead. It's still his bodily form, but now he has the holes in his hands and the holes in his feet and the holes in his side, because it's after the resurrection, but the holes are in his body. So this is the resurrected Christ, not the dying Christ. And there was a statue hanging on the wall in the church. And I noticed it was surrounded in a bright light coming in from outside through the window. All of the rest of the wall where the life-size statue was hanging was not lit up at all, but only that statue was radiantly lit up. After I noticed the bright light, and I felt Jesus wanting me to notice this attention-getting moment, I looked around to see where the light was coming from. Well, it was coming from my car outside. I noticed that I had parked in the perfect and precise spot so that the sun was now bouncing off of my car window and into the church window. Light was coming in at the right slant and degree to come inside through two windows. Amazingly, the sun had to reflect off my car, then into the window of the foyer of the church, and then through the next window so it could reach and reflect upon the statue at the front of the church. Jesus himself revealed all of the creativity and correct positioning of all these factors to me so that I could grasp and realize the magnitude of this great miracle gift. Just before Jesus then said, "And you had to be sitting here exactly at this moment, and you had to park your car exactly where you did park it, before the sunshine came into its place in the sky just now. Can you see now why I called you here at this moment, and had you park where you did park?" I have learned a long time ago that if we do not observe and ponder these types of coincidence miracles, we miss out on many miracles in our lives. God creates these moments for us as gifts for us, his friends. I also noticed in the above miracle that the sun was moving across the sky at just the right speed for me to see this miracle as I was there, because 5 minutes later, the sun stopped reflecting inside the church. The sun had moved on and was now reaching my car outside. It was not reaching my car outside any longer. We're on page 150. We are going to now read the miracle of a giant suntan miracle. On another visit to chat with Jesus in his church one day, I felt Jesus teaching me that just sitting there facing the Holy Blessed Sacrament helps our souls to receive a spiritual nourishment. We receive this nourishment even if we do not even speak a word. Jesus said it is just like sitting in the sunshine at the beach, which tans our bodies. Sitting in the church near the tabernacle gains godly spiritual radiation for our souls. It is almost as if our souls get a bit more of a suntan each time we visit Jesus there in his church, near his Blessed Sacrament. On the next day, I went to a Catholic lecture at a retreat house, not realizing that the whole hour's lecture was planned to be specifically all about the Holy Eucharistic Bread and Tabernacle. Wow. Wow. I was pleasantly surprised, and Jesus inspired my soul to realize that he had planned for this to happen exactly the way it was happening right now. Jesus knew I would be hearing this lecture on that day right after he had taught me about the tabernacle suntan just one day earlier. Then on the day after the lecture, I sat down to eat my supper and watched one of the pre-recorded TV shows I had recorded earlier in the week. And Jesus nudged me to watch the show called Life is Worth Living, which is the taping of Bishop Fulton J. Sheen, world-famous TV lectures from 1950 through 1960. As I watched this 1966 show, which Jesus had nudged me to record a few days earlier, in the year 2017, by the way, I saw some amazing and huge evidence that Jesus wanted this item put into this book today. Because just as I began to watch Fulton J. Sheen's show, I immediately heard Fulton J. Sheen on TV saying the following things. Quote, "When we go to a Catholic church and sit in the presence of the Holy Eucharistic Bread, we receive the amazing benefit of receiving the radiation of God into our souls. For just as there is a cosmic radiation from the sun present at the beach for sunbathers, there is also a godly radiation from the Holy Eucharistic presence of Jesus, who is present in the Holy Tabernacle in our Catholic churches." End quote. Bishop Sheen continued, open quote, "I often tell people who have spiritual questions or daily problems to just go and sit there in a Catholic church near the tabernacle where the Holy Eucharistic bread is kept. Sitting there and just listening to Jesus clarifies everything for us." End quote. You see, Bishop Fulton J. Sheen very carefully explained that we benefit from sitting in a Catholic church even if we just sit there and do nothing except to let God shine His graces upon our souls, just like the sunshine automatically does shine on bathers at the ocean's beaches. So just sitting there, asking Jesus for help or clarification, and trying to listen to ideas that come to us is really all we need to do to receive clarity and help from Jesus each day. Likewise, Mother Teresa of Calcutta and St. John Paul the Great, also known as Pope John Paul II, were both well known for spending hours visiting Jesus by sitting or kneeling before the tabernacle in a Catholic church each day. Many of the 8,000 saints in history also spent time alone with Jesus near His tabernacles in His churches. It is a great place to spend time alone with Jesus. Many saints did this every single day. I guess now we all know that there is a sunshine, cosmic radiation from the sun in the sky, and there is a sunshine radiation from the Holy Eucharistic presence of Jesus, the Son of God, in His churches. My eyes automatically became tearful when I saw Fulton J. Sheen saying the same things 51 years earlier, which I had heard from Jesus in my soul at the church just the prior day. This was so amazing to me. Almost the precise same words were being said by Fulton J. Sheen that I had heard in the church listening to Jesus. And it happened just as I was planning on how to explain all of this to anyone someday. If you would like to watch that taped 1966 show, that particular Fulton J. Sheen show was broadcast for us again at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from the EWTN TV network on Sunday, January 8th, 2017, while I was writing this book. You can phone EWTN TV for viewing times at 1-866-357-4336 or check it out on www.bishopsheehan.com or call them at 1-800-854-6316. What a wonderful gift all of this was. Thank you, Jesus. I'd like to make a point that the Holy Eucharistic Bread now does remain in the Catholic churches. That's the tradition. So Catholic churches have this Holy Eucharistic Bread there reserved, which has become the presence of God. There's usually a red or white candle burning next to the tabernacle to remind us that there is a living force, a life force there in that tabernacle. And what I'd like to stress is that the Jews in history, they had a temple, and because of what God told Moses, they used to keep a holy bread in the inner sanctum of the temple, and only the priests were able to eat that holy bread in the temple for generations after Moses. It was always in the temple. And now Jesus, who was a Jew, who started his church 2,000 years ago, Jesus created for us at the Last Supper this wonderful miracle of, he said that this holy bread would be his body, blood, soul, and divinity for us. We are on page 154, and we're going to be reading another miracle about a confirmation of the suntan miracle. Some of you may already know that I have been emailing out weekly letters to share inspirations and miracles which I have been blessed to notice each week. I send those weekly letters out using the address Jesus designed for me. It's an email address with 2 words and 3 numbers. The email address is with, That's with spelled W-I-T-H, then 3 numbers, 777, and then the word with again, W-I-T-H. So let me repeat that. The address is with 777 with at AOL.com. The following info was taken from a with 777 email letter, which was mailed out after the above Bishop Fulton J. Sheen miracle had occurred. The above miracle was also sent out as a letter, number 2208, with the with 777 email address on January 11th, the year 2017. The following letter did also mention the miracle above too. The more recent weekly letter number 2210, which is 2 letters after the letter on the miracle, said the following. Dear readers, you may recall that letter number 2208 about the sunshine miracle was followed by a wonderful miracle received by viewing Fulton J. Sheen's 1966 broadcast. Well, even after I mailed letter 2208 out to all of you, the miracles still continue to occur as follows. For example, I attended morning mass on the day I emailed letter 2208, and I noticed that the responsorial psalm number 105 for that morning's holy mass fittingly said, "Make known among the nations and proclaim all his wondrous deeds." End quote. The Bible tells us that, open quote, we should be very excited and joyful in proclaiming what we notice about God, close quote. Then I noticed that the communion antiphon prayer at Mass, which we prayed before we went up to receive the Holy Eucharistic Bread, stupendously confirmed letter number 2208 because it said, open quote, "Lord, in your light we see light." References Psalm number 36. This confirmed the suntan letter. After Mass was over and everyone had gone, I lingered to speak to Jesus, who is always present there in the Blessed Sacrament in the tabernacle in that form of holy bread, just a form of his new presence among us. I approached the tabernacle and genuflected on one knee in reverence. I noticed a large white light suddenly appear and float above the tabernacle on the wall. Its sudden arrival, floating above the tabernacle, stunned me and reminded me of the sunshine letter, number 2208, once again. The floating white light was about the size of a 3-inch diameter round host, which the priest uses for holy consecration at the altar during Mass. Many people in history have seen floating lights like this in history as clues of a miracle. After I had gotten over being stunned and I finally gathered my thoughts, I noticed that the sunshine coming in from the outside window had hit my wristwatch just as precisely and perfectly necessary in order to create that white reflection on the wall, but only because I had genuflected exactly and precisely where I had placed my knee. If my knee had been off just a quarter of an inch, the light reflection would not have appeared at all. My point here is that Jesus had arranged for me to remain after Mass and to genuflect exactly as I did in order for this coincidence miracle to reach me. Then, later that same day, I heard on the news that a New York detective had passed away on this very same morning, Detective Stephen McDonald. And Cardinal Dolan of New York City explained to the news media how Steve had often asked to be allowed into the church in his wheelchair in the middle of the night so that he could sit close to the Blessed Sacrament, which is present in all the church tabernacles. Steve loved to spend time there with Jesus, as many of the saints in history have done, and as I told you, Mother Teresa of Calcutta and St. John Paul the Great also enjoyed spending time there alone with Jesus next to his tabernacle in that form of holy bread. Steve stopped by so often with his wheelchair to visit the church that the church pastor gave him his own personal key to get in any time he wanted. Steve was recognized as a very holy and saintly policeman who had been in a wheelchair for 30 years since being shot while on duty as a young policeman in New York City. It was sad to hear about Steve passing away on this day, but his story being aired to the world on the same day as Letter 2210 was another clue from Jesus to reaffirm Letters 2208 and Letter 2210 again about visiting the tabernacle. You can search the internet for Detective Stephen McDonald's New York City funeral, which was held on January 21st in the year 2010, to read about this holy and impressive policeman. He found great joy and peace in sitting in an empty church near Christ's holy tabernacle. Then, right after all of the above had already confirmed both with 777 letters, 2208 and 2210, about the sunshine at the tabernacle and the cosmic sunshine, the following thing happened. I received an email from one with 777 reader who stated that just seconds after reading that letter 2208, a coworker came into their office with a huge personal and emotional problem and with great sadness. This reader explained to the visitor who came in the great possible positive results of people sitting in a Catholic church next to the Holy Blessed Sacrament, even if they are not Catholic. Remember, I didn't write this book to change people's religion. I'm just telling the world that you don't have to be Catholic to sit in a Catholic church and talk to Jesus. This troubled person, who seemed not to be a Catholic, left the reader's office immediately to go and visit Jesus for mercy, love, and comfort. Obviously, Jesus had letter number 2208 arrive at that office perfectly and precisely timed so that the reader of the letter knew about it as this person came into their office. The with 777 reader said they were amazed that the person needing to hear about the tabernacle of Jesus had entered his office precisely just seconds after he had read the letter 2208. That's amazing indeed. However, nothing is impossible for God. In addition, I noticed that even before the above had occurred, that I had also been in an empty church with Jesus on 118 in the year 2017, and Jesus nudged me to reach for a book which I saw sitting in the pew next to me. Jesus said to open it up at random because he would guide my fingers to the right page. I was excited to see that I opened at random to a page where the author was explaining how he too daily visits the Blessed Sacrament of a church to talk with Jesus. The book I opened at random, with Jesus leading my thumbnails to open to a certain page, was the book entitled Resisting Happiness by Matthew Kelly. And Jesus got my fingers to randomly open to page 32 in chapter 7. I prepared this with letter number 2210 to be issued today, January 21st, 2017, and I noticed this morning that the reading at Mass was Hebrews chapter 9, saying that the Holy Tabernacle with holy bread was also used by the Jews too, You see, the Jews also had holy bread in their temples each day as well. The morning reading at Mass on this particular day, in part, said, open quote, Hebrews 9, "Now even the first covenant had regulations for worship, and an earthly sanctuary, for a tent, a holy tabernacle, was prepared, the outer one, in which were the lampstand and the table, and the bread of the holy presence." Close quote. Now it even makes more sense than ever that Jesus has given us this holy sign to remain with us forever on earth, this holy bread, because in the Old Testament, only the Jewish priests were allowed to eat that holy bread. But now, because Jesus has come to fulfill the old laws and prophecies about himself, Jesus tells us that he, Jesus, is the holy bread of life, which is now in our church tabernacles all over the world for everyone freely to come and visit Jesus whenever anyone wishes to come. We are on page 160. I do encourage everyone to visit an empty Catholic church whenever they can as they pass by during the day, even if they're not Catholic. I am confident that Jesus blesses all those who do come in to visit him. You need not be Catholic to do this. Some people just also say, "Hi, Jesus," as they drive by outside if they can't find time to stop inside. God obviously can do anything that he wants to do, and almost all the saints in history have spent some time alone with Jesus in an empty church during their lives whenever they had time. If you Google the lives of the saints, you will see that this is true. It is well worth the time to do so because it is most likely the holiest place on the planet Earth. Now you can imagine or understand why the 8,000 saints that became saints, they used to, most of them, almost all of them, used to go to daily Mass and swallow the holy Eucharistic bread. It's no wonder if being in a church talking to Jesus in the form of bread is a miraculous experience. But imagine if you go to Mass every morning and swallow the bread, what it does to the human body.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT.